Welcome back to the ABC General Hospital Spoilers channel, where today we dive deep into one of the most compelling and dramatic storylines that Port Charles has witnessed in recent memory. The shocking revelations unfolding behind the glittering facade of this beloved daytime drama are nothing short of extraordinary as we explore the intricate web of deception, violence, and desperation that now ensnares multiple characters in a deadly game of survival. The intersection of Anna Deane's perilous captivity and Sidwell's ruthless management of his criminal empire creates a perfect storm of tension and suspense that will reverberate through Port Charles for months to come. In today's comprehensive spoiler breakdown, we will uncover the explosive developments surrounding Anna's finally successful escape, the escalating fury of the calculating villain Sidwell when his subordinate Pascal fails catastrophically to complete a critical mission, and the terrifying consequences that inevitably follow when a ruthless crime boss decides that elimination is the only viable solution. These interconnected storylines represent the very essence of what makes General Hospital such a compelling and addictive television experience for millions of devoted fans worldwide. Anna Deane's desperate struggle for freedom and the path to her ultimate escape. Anna Deane, the legendary former WSB super spy portrayed by the exceptionally talented Finola Hughes, finds herself in the most perilous predicament of her storied career when she is kidnapped and held captive on the remote and imposing Windermere estate, which serves as the elaborate domain of the Casadini family and more importantly the operational headquarters for the sinister Sidwell and his expanding criminal enterprise. What began as what appeared to be an innocent vacation has evolved into something far more terrifying and claustrophobic. Anna's situation deteriorates rapidly when she receives a call from someone emerging from her extensive and complicated past. A voice that resurrects memories and secrets that she had hoped would remain buried forever. The realization that she has become trapped in captivity, separated from her beloved granddaughter Emma and her closest friends and family members, transforms Anna from the capable intelligence operative into a woman fighting desperately for her very survival. Her resourcefulness, honed through decades of perilous missions, international intrigue, and impossible situations, becomes her greatest asset as she formulates increasingly bold plans to break free from her captors. The atmosphere of isolation and desperation that surrounds Anna's captivity is compounded by the fact that nobody in Port Charles, not even the most devoted members of law enforcement or the intelligence community, initially suspects that she might be in mortal danger. Emma receives photographs that appear to show her grandmother enjoying a leisurely ski holiday, creating a false sense of security that prevents anyone from launching an immediate rescue operation. This deception is masterfully orchestrated by Sidwell and his network of operatives, demonstrating the sophisticated nature of his criminal operation and his ability to manipulate circumstances to his advantage. However, Anna's desperation grows with each passing day, and her determination to escape becomes increasingly fierce and unwavering. Drawing upon her vast experience as a trained operative, she carefully observes her captors, learns their patterns and routines, identifies weaknesses in their security protocols, and begins to develop a concrete plan for her liberation. Her attempts at escape are not reckless or impulsive acts born from desperation alone, but rather calculated moves executed by someone who understands the stakes involved and the consequences of failure. The turning point arrives when Anna's loved ones finally discover the horrifying truth that she has been kidnapped and is being held hostage. Emma, working alongside her grandfather, Max Scorpio, and her grandmother, Felicia, manages to locate a sighting of Anna that confirms their worst fears. The emotional weight of this discovery galvanizes them into action, and they launch a desperate rescue mission to find and free Anna from her captors before it is too late. What unfolds during this rescue attempt becomes a traumatic and life-altering experience for the entire Scorpio family, with consequences that will reshape their relationships and test the very foundations of their bonds. Anna, seizing upon the chaos and confusion created by the arrival of her family and their attempts to mount a rescue operation, makes her bold bid for freedom. Drawing upon every ounce of her training, her instincts, and her sheer determination to reunite with her family, Anna finally manages to engineer her escape from the clutches of Sidwell and his operatives. Overcoming the carefully constructed security measures and contingency plans that had been put in place to ensure her continued captivity. The moment of her escape represents not merely the conclusion of her physical imprisonment, but the beginning of a new chapter filled with revelations, redemptions, and the exposure of secrets that Sidwell has been desperately trying to keep hidden. The escalating fury of Sidwell and the fatal consequences of Pascal's catastrophic failure. Jen Sidwell, the brilliant and merciless villain master portrayed by Canadian actor Carlo Roa, represents a new breed of criminal antagonist in the world of Port Charles. Unlike the traditionally volatile and emotionally driven villains of soap opera history, Sidwell is a calculating, methodical operative whose power derives not from theatrical displays of rage, but from cold logic, meticulous planning, and an absolute willingness to execute anyone who threatens his carefully constructed empire. Throughout the previous months, Sidwell has accumulated an impressive collection of criminal operatives who worked tirelessly to advance his nefarious agenda, including the implementation of Faison's final and most ambitious project, a scientific endeavor shrouded in mystery and danger. Among his most trusted and capable lieutenants is Pascal, a skilled operative who has demonstrated unwavering loyalty and the ability to accomplish difficult and dangerous tasks without hesitation or moral qualms. However, the relationship between Sidwell and Pascal is about to undergo a catastrophic transformation when Pascal finds himself unable to complete a mission of critical importance. The specific mission that triggers this dramatic turning point involves an assignment directly related to the maintenance of order and control within Sidwell's operation and potentially the elimination of a problem that has become increasingly intractable and dangerous. When Pascal fails to successfully complete this task, when he returns to report to Sidwell that the mission has not been accomplished as planned, the response from the villain is not merely disappointing or moderately angry, but rather represents an explosive display of fury that shakes Pascal to his core. Sidwell's anger is not the kind of emotional outburst that can be weathered or survived through explanations and excuses. Instead, it is the cold, calculated wrath of a man who is determined that a failure of this magnitude represents an unacceptable breach of the operational standards that he has established and expects to be maintained without exception. For someone like Sidwell, who operates within a world where loyalty is currency and competence is essential, the failure of a subordinate is not merely a setback to be overcome, but a fundamental violation of the hierarchical structure upon which his entire criminal enterprise depends. The parallels between Pascal's situation and that of Professor Henry Hank Dalton, the brilliant but volatile scientist who previously fell victim to Sidwell's ruthlessness, are both striking and deeply ominous for Pascal's future survival. Dalton, despite his exceptional scientific abilities and the valuable contributions he had made to Faison's research project, had become increasingly difficult to manage and control, demonstrating a troubling tendency toward insubordination, public outbursts, and a dangerous willingness to challenge Sidwell's authority. Dalton's behavior deteriorated further when he felt personally humiliated by being demoted and reassigned to work under Britt Westman, a situation that wounded his pride and triggered in him an obsessive desire for revenge against those he perceived as having caused his downfall. The vindictive Dalton became increasingly volatile, threatening to expose Sidwell's criminal activities, making reckless accusations against innocent people and generally creating precisely the kind of chaos and instability that a criminal mastermind like Sidwell simply cannot tolerate. Recognizing that Dalton had become a liability that could no longer be managed or controlled through conventional means, Sidwell made the fateful decision to eliminate the problematic professor, dispatching Pascal to carry out the execution. Pascal shot the drunken and unstable Dalton in what was designed to appear as an accidental death caused by his own reckless behavior. With the murder occurring in a location where Britt Westman witnessed the shocking event, the elimination of Dalton was not merely a practical solution to an operational problem, but rather served a deeper psychological purpose within Sidwell's grand design. By removing Dalton, Sidwell sent a clear and unmistakable message to everyone within his organization that failure in subordination and the creation of operational chaos would result in swift and permanent consequences. The example set by Dalton's death was designed to instill fear and force obedience and establish the absolute authority of Sidwell within his criminal hierarchy. However, the execution of Dalton also represented something more sinister. Still, it was the beginning of a broader purge, a systematic elimination of all those deemed problematic or unreliable. Now, as Pascal stands before Sidwell to report his failure to complete the critical mission, the operative realizes with growing horror that he may very well face the same fate that befell Dalton. The dynamic between master and servant, between those who give orders and those who execute them, has fundamentally shifted. Pascal is no longer viewed as a trusted lieutenant and capable operative, but rather as someone whose failure represents a dangerous liability, a potential security risk, and a symbol of weakness that must be eliminated to maintain order and demonstrate that Sidwell's standards remain absolute and non-negotiable. The anger that Sidwell exhibits toward Pascal is not the kind of emotional rage that might be appeased through apologies or efforts to correct the failure, but rather the icy determination of a cold-blooded killer who has already made the calculation that Pascal has outlived his usefulness and that his elimination will serve multiple purposes. Simultaneously, the deadly pattern of elimination and Sidwell's method of control through fear. The decision that Sidwell makes regarding Pascal's fate becomes another data point in a larger pattern of elimination that is steadily becoming more apparent to those who pay close attention. Just as he eliminated Dalton when the scientist became too much of a liability, Sidwell now makes the fateful decision to eliminate Pascal for his failure to successfully complete a critical assignment. The act of killing Pascal serves multiple strategic purposes within Sidwell's criminal architecture. First and foremost, it eliminates a potential security risk. Someone who knows too much about Sidwell's operations, his true identity, his capabilities, and his plans, and who cannot be trusted to maintain absolute silence regarding these sensitive matters. Second, it reinforces the message that had been delivered through Dalton's death, that loyalty to Sidwell is absolute, that competence is non-negotiable, and that failure carries the ultimate consequence. The methodology employed in Pascal's execution likely mirrors that used against Dalton. With careful attention paid to maintaining plausible deniability and ensuring that the death appears to be the result of accident, misadventure, or natural causes rather than deliberate murder. Sidwell understands the importance of maintaining operational security and ensuring that his criminal activities remain hidden from the prying eyes of law enforcement and the intelligence community by staging these murders to appear accidental or the result of unrelated circumstances. Sidwell avoids drawing unnecessary attention from the authorities while simultaneously accomplishing his objective of eliminating threats to his operation. The removal of both Dalton and Pascal demonstrates a level of calculated ruthlessness that sets Sidwell apart from many of the criminals and antagonists who have previously operated within the Port Charles underworld. What makes Sidwell such a compelling and frightening villain is his absolute willingness to dispose of anyone who becomes inconvenient or problematic, regardless of their previous loyalty or contributions to his criminal enterprise. Unlike some crime bosses who are bound by codes of honor or loyalty that prevent them from killing those within their inner circle, Sidwell operates without such constraints. His only allegiance is to the successful completion of his objectives and the maintenance of absolute control over his operation. The fear that Sidwell inspires in those around him, the omnipresent knowledge among his subordinates that failure or disloyalty will result in swift elimination, becomes the primary instrument through which he maintains control. This is far more effective than any written code or explicitly stated threat because it operates at the level of visceral terror and survival instinct. Everyone working for Sidwell knows that their continued existence depends upon their usefulness and their ability to follow orders without question or hesitation. The escalation from Dalton's death to Pascal's execution marks a critical turning point in Sidwell's criminal trajectory. He is no longer merely responding to immediate threats or solving isolated problems, but rather engaged in a comprehensive recalibration of his entire organization, eliminating anyone who might prove problematic and establishing himself as an absolute authority figure whose word is law and whose decisions regarding life and death are final and irreversible. This pattern of systematic elimination, while terrifying to those within his organization, also signals to outside observers like Sonny Corinthos, the traditional crime boss of Port Charles, that a new and more dangerous power has emerged on the criminal landscape. Sidwell represents a threat not merely to his own operatives, but to the established order of organized crime in Port Charles. And his willingness to eliminate anyone, regardless of their connection or previous service, makes him far more dangerous and unpredictable than traditional crime bosses who operate within established codes and conventions. The broader implications for Port Charles and the emerging power dynamics. The elimination of Pascal represents more than merely the death of another individual character in the complex tapestry of General Hospital. It signals a major shift in the power dynamics that govern Port Charles and the relationships between the various forces operating within the town. Sidwell's escalating violence and his demonstrated willingness to eliminate anyone who threatens his objectives or fails to meet his exacting standards make him a profound threat not merely to those within his immediate circle, but to the broader stability and safety of the entire community. As more people become aware of Sidwell's true nature and his capacity for ruthless violence, alliances will shift, strategies will change, and new coalitions will form in response to this emerging threat. Sonny and Laura, two of the most powerful and influential figures in Port Charles, are beginning to recognize the magnitude of the threat that Sidwell represents and are collaborating to find ways to outflank and ultimately defeat him. The investigations into the mysterious deaths of Dalton and Pascal may eventually provide the crucial evidence needed to expose Sidwell's criminal operation to law enforcement and the broader community. The truth about what Sidwell has accomplished, the scientific research being conducted under his supervision on Spoon Island, and the nefarious purposes to which this research is being put will eventually come to light, creating a cascade of consequences that will reshape Port Charles forever. Meanwhile, Anna Dean, freed from her captivity and finally able to reunite with her family, becomes a crucial witness to the truth about Sidwell's activities and a powerful force for justice and accountability. Her escape marks not an ending, but rather the beginning of a new chapter in which she can work alongside those who care for her to bring down the man who kidnapped and imprisoned her, ensuring that he cannot harm anyone else and that his crimes are exposed to the world. Next, we will be diving deep into one of the most compelling questions that has been on the minds of devoted fans since 2021. Will Jasper Jacks ever make a triumphant return to Port Charles? The absence of this beloved character has left a noticeable void in the storylines, and there are compelling reasons why the General Hospital creative team should seriously consider bringing him back into the fold, either with the original actor or through a strategic recast. The fall from legacy status, a character's dramatic decline. There was once a time when Jasper Jacks stood as a cornerstone of General Hospital's legacy. He was a character who commanded respect, wielded influence, and was intricately woven into the fabric of Port Charles's most important narratives. As one of the show's prominent figures, Jacks represented sophistication, honor, and a moral compass that guided many storylines. However, the landscape of daytime television shifted dramatically, and with it came the tumultuous exit that would change everything for this once celebrated character. The departure of Ingo Radoker in 2021 marked a turning point that few fans anticipated would result in such a prolonged absence. What made this exit particularly notable was not simply a creative decision to write off the character, but rather a conflict surrounding personal choices regarding health mandates. Radoker's refusal to comply with ABC Network's vaccine requirements led to his termination from the show. A decision that rippled through the fanbase and sparked considerable debate about representation and character continuation. Years of silence, the forgotten hero of Port Charles. As months turned into years, something peculiar happened. The character of Jasper Jacks gradually faded from the collective memory of Port Charles. Storylines moved forward without him. New characters were introduced to fill various narrative niches, and the show seemingly adapted to his absence as if he had never existed. This is perhaps the most tragic element of his departure. Not the separation itself, but the way in which the character was essentially erased from the canvas and from active discussion. The writers seemed content to move on, leaving Jacks and his legacy in the dusty archives of General Hospital history rather than actively exploring how his absence should be impacting the lives of those closest to him. The show has done little to acknowledge the void left behind by this departure, which speaks volumes about how the character has been treated since his exit. Once a pillar of the community within the soap opera, Jacks has become more of an afterthought. A name occasionally mentioned in passing, but rarely the subject of current storylines or discussions that would prompt fans to wonder about his whereabouts or his future return. The case for return, Jocelyn's greatest need. One of the most pressing reasons fans have been clamoring for Jacks's return centers on his daughter Jocelyn, who has undoubtedly faced more than her share of trials and tribulations. While General Hospital has provided Jocelyn with various support systems and romantic interests, There exists an irreplaceable bond between a father and daughter that no amount of friendship or romantic connection can fully substitute. Throughout the years, Jocelyn has dealt with intense personal dramas, relationship complications, and emotional challenges that would benefit tremendously from paternal guidance and unconditional support. A father figure of Jax's caliber, wealthy, protective, wise, and genuinely invested in his daughter's well-being, would provide Jocelyn with stability and a different kind of emotional anchor. The storyline possibilities become immediately apparent when one considers how transformative his presence could be for her character development. Whether dealing with romantic entanglements, professional aspiration, or personal crisis, Jocelyn would find in her father a confidant who has always had her best interests at heart. Someone who could offer perspective that comes only from years of navigating complex Port Charles dynamics. The Carly connection beyond romantic entanglement. While Carly Corinthos is certainly not lacked for male attention and romantic prospects in Port Charles, having her share of suitors and admirers constantly vying for her affection, though. Reality is that genuine friendship and trusted counsel are commodities far more valuable than casual attention. Throughout their on-screen history, Carly and Jax have demonstrated a chemistry that transcends the typical romance narrative. Their interactions carried weight, authenticity, and a sense of mutual respect that allowed both characters to be vulnerable without losing their essential strength. With everything currently transpiring in Carly's life, from the endless drama surrounding her various relationships to the pressures of her professional endeavors and family obligations, she would benefit immeasurably from having a reliable, trustworthy presence she could turn to without complications. Jax represents someone who has proven time and again that he places Carly's interests above his own, making him an ideal confidant during turbulent times. The best on-screen chemistry Carly has ever experienced has consistently been with Jax. A dynamic that speaks to the depth of their connection and the genuine affection that exists between them. Regardless of romantic status, Alexis Davis, a friendship redefined, longtime fans of General Hospital will remember that at one point in time, Alexis Davis possessed something increasingly rare in daytime television: a best friend. That treasured position was held by none other than Jasper Jax, and theirs was a friendship that stood the test of time and various complications. The camaraderie between these two characters provided viewers with meaningful interactions that showcased the emotional depth both actors could bring to quieter, more intimate scenes that didn't necessarily revolve around dramatic conflicts or romantic entanglements. Given everything that Alexis continues to navigate in her complicated life, from her professional struggles as an attorney to her tumultuous personal relationships and family dynamics, she stands as another character who would be profoundly impacted by Jax's return. The prospect of reuniting these two characters would offer General Hospital the opportunity to explore how a genuine friendship survives years of separation and how it might evolve and deepen upon reconnection. Nancy Lee Grahn, the talented actress who portrays Alexis, has consistently demonstrated enthusiasm for character interactions that highlight friendship rather than romance, and she would undoubtedly embrace the opportunity to reconnect with Jax in meaningful ways. It's highly probable that if the recast option were presented to her, she would eagerly accept the opportunity to revive this cherished friendship on screen. A man of action, Port Charles's ultimate problem solver. One frequently overlooked aspect of Jax's character is his unique ability to get things accomplished, often through means that exist in a morally gray area, but ultimately achieve necessary results. Recall, if you will, the incident where Jax illegally recorded Martin Gray at the behest of Valentine Casadini. This action exemplified Jax's willingness to bend the rules, to take calculated risks, and to employ unconventional methods when the situation demands it. While such tactics certainly raise ethical questions, they also demonstrate a level of competence and determination that Port Charles desperately needs at various junctures. The canvas of Port Charles is rife with characters who are constantly in need of someone willing to operate outside standard legal or social boundaries in order to achieve necessary outcomes. Jax possesses the sophistication, resources, and moral flexibility to navigate these gray areas in ways that many of the current cast members simply cannot. His return would provide the show with a character who could serve as an active problem solver. Someone who could drive plots forward through his own agency rather than simply reacting to the machinations of others. A survivor's resilience, the ultimate hero. Throughout his time on General Hospital, Jasper Jacks has proven himself to be extraordinarily resilient in the face of adversity. This man has literally had a gun held to his head multiple times throughout his tenure in Port Charles, has been physically assaulted by various antagonists, and has even been purposefully tripped by Charlotte Casadini during various encounters. Despite these countless threats to his personal safety, Jacks has consistently emerged intact, undeterred, and ready to face whatever challenges come his way next. This resilience speaks to the strength of his character. Not merely in terms of physical toughness, but in emotional fortitude and determination. His heroism manifests in ways both grand and understated. One particularly memorable instance that exemplifies his character was when Jacks jumped into frigid cold water to rescue Lissel Ulrich from drowning. This scene, which occurred back in 2019, perfectly encapsulates the essence of who Jacks is as a person. Someone willing to risk his own physical well-being for the sake of another human being. Regardless of whether that person was a close friend or someone with whom he had a complicated history, there are simply not enough heroes of Jacks's caliber in the current Port Charles landscape. Heroes who act from a place of genuine compassion and moral conviction rather than from self-interest. The strategic case for recasting. Should Ingo Rademker's return prove impossible for various reasons, whether due to ongoing disputes, contractual complications, or other impediments, the strategic path forward would be to bring the character back through careful recasting. General Hospital has a long history of successfully recasting legacy characters, introducing new actors who bring their own interpretations while maintaining the essential core of the character. A recast Jacks would allow the show to preserve the character's legacy while potentially opening new creative avenues that a recasting might inspire. The right actor in this role could invigorate the character and provide fresh energy to Port Charles. The character itself remains compelling, the relationships remain rich with possibility, and the storyline opportunities remain abundant. A successful recast would not be betraying the character or disappointing longtime fans. Rather, it would be a celebration of the character's enduring appeal and a commitment to keeping this crucial piece of Port Charles's tapestry alive and vibrant. The case for bringing Jasper Jacks back to Port Charles is compelling and multifaceted. From the emotional needs of his daughter Jocelyn to the complicated friendship Alexis desperately requires to the trustworthy alliance Carly deserves to the undeniable void his absence has created in the show's hero narrative, every angle points toward the same conclusion. Jasper Jacks belongs in Port Charles. And the longer he remains absent from the canvas, the more the show loses an essential element of its narrative identity. Whether through the original actor or through strategic recasting, the time has come for this beloved character to reclaim his place in the continuing story of General Hospital.